Gym Candy Part 2, Chapter 1. So much had happened over that weekend that I forgot how angry Rooney had been until I returned to practice field Monday. I considered telling him that I was going to stop smarting off, that I was different from my dad. But what good are words? I'd show him. That practice, I pushed myself to outperform everyone, especially Drew Carney. Running drills, agility drills, strength drills, I took him on. If he made it through the tires in 20 seconds, then I was going to do it in 19. If he managed 30 push-ups, then I was doing 31. If he ran the 440 in 55 seconds, then I was clocking 54. After 2 hours, Rooney blew his whistle. "Good practice, men," he called out. He turned to me and our eyes locked. "Very good practice." As I walked toward the parking lot, Drew fell in stride beside me. "That was fun," he said. "What?" I said. "You trying hard like that. It made practice better." "Yeah, I guess it did," I said. "A bunch of us play flag football at Crown Hill Park in the afternoons. A kid named Deshaun Free is always there, and usually there are some guys who go to Shoshone High. You should come around." After I ate lunch, I walked to Crown Hill Park. They had even teams, but Drew made the other guys make room for me, even though it meant going 6-on-5. I had a great time that day, and after that I played flag football with those guys every chance I got. The games turned out to be more competitive than our league games. About half the guys were on the Shoshone High varsity, and they were determined to push me and Drew and Deshaun around, which made us determined not to be pushed around. We kicked our effort up a notch, and pretty soon Drew and I started clicking together. Handoffs, pitch-outs, swing passes, you name it, and we were right in sync. It was as if we'd been playing together all our lives. That harmony should have been carried over and made us tough to beat in Pop Warner, but the league has a rule requiring the coach to play everyone on the team for at least one quarter. Most of our second stringers were new to football, and it showed. When Drew was at quarterback and I was at running back, we'd march down the field, slicing through the defense. But at the start of the third quarter, Rooney pulled us, and we'd stand on the sidelines and watch the other team demolish our second string. Sometimes when we came back into the game at the start of the fourth quarter, we'd rekindle the fire and win. But lots of times we'd never find our rhythm. Drew would throw an interception or I'd fumble and our opponents would sneak away with the victory. After we'd lost some game we should have won, my dad would be stone-faced, his eyes angry. That was okay with Drew and me, because that's exactly how we felt. But Drew's dad would come over, a big smile on his face, and talk about how exciting the game had been. Sportsmanship. That's what's important, boys. The winning and the losing don't matter. He was hard to listen to, because it did matter, and not just for our league record. We cared about that, but we were also looking a year ahead. Off and on during the season, a man had shown up at our games. For a quarter, even a half, sometimes even a half, he'd stand right next to Mr. Rooney, talking to him and then writing things in a notebook. Brad Middleton, one of the high school guys who played flag football with, filled us in. "Tall guy, right? Going bald? That's Mr. Trahane. He's Shoshone High's defensive backfield coach. He's scouting you. You impress him, and you'll get an invitation to spring football, which means you can have a solid chance to make varsity. You don't catch his eye, you won't get invited, and that means the JV team." Middleton paused. "Believe me, you really don't want to be on the JV team. The coach sucks, the practice field sucks, the ref sucks, and the team sucks." Once I knew the score, every game became a tryout. Win or lose, I'd ask my dad if Trahane had been there. If the answer was yes, I'd pepper him with questions. How had I done while he was watching? Did I mess anything up? What did he think Trahane wrote down about me? "Just keep working hard like you're doing," my dad would say. "You're not going to get the invite because of one play, and you're not going to lose it because of one play. You try to do too much, and you'll fall flat on your face." Chapter 2. We finished the season with a 5-5 record, just out of the playoffs. When Pop Warner ended, it was hard to fill the days. School took up 6 hours. After school, Drew and I would go to the Crown Hill Park to play football. But each day was shorter and darker than the one before, and fewer guys were showing up. Weekends were a little better. The field was growing soft from the rain, so we'd play tackle football in the mud. The grosser it was, the better. We'd go home, get cleaned up, and then either Drew would come to my house or I'd go to his. We would hang out together playing video games and foosball. Over Christmas break, my grandparents came up from San Francisco and stayed with us for 5 days. They're my mom's parents, and they're nice enough, but they still treat me like I'm 5 years old. I'd turned 15 just before they arrived, and they insisted on taking me out for a Happy Meal at McDonald's. After that, Grandpa Leo and I went to Interbay to play miniature golf. The wind was howling so hard I thought it was going to knock Grandpa Leo into one of the windmills. But he kept telling me how much fun he was having, and how much he was to be visiting, and how glad he was to be visiting, and how much I had grown. Christmas Day, I got the regular stuff, plus my own cell phone. "It's a pay-as-you-go plan, Mick," my mom said, "strictly for emergencies." The first week of January, my dad was offered a different time slot at the station. He'd be working with Lion Terry, not Ben Braun, and his hours would be from 4 in the afternoon to 9 at night. My mom wanted him to take it. "You know what I think of Ben Braun," she said. "Lion would be easier to work with," he said, "and I wouldn't have to get up at 4 in the morning anymore." He looked at me. "But I won't be around much in the evenings. The house will be empty when you come home." "That's okay," I said. "I just come in and go right out. You know that." He pulled on his ear a little. "How about football? How are you going to get to games?" "I can get a ride with Drew's dad any time," I said. "He's told me that." "Take the job," my mom said. "Please." He smiled. "Ben Braun is not going to be happy." My mom laughed. "One more reason to take it." Chapter 3. January, February, March. All through those months, I felt as if I were stuck in mud. Guys had stopped showing up at the park, so the flag football games had fallen apart. The days were short, rainy, and cold, and I was sick of Lowell Middle School, sick of the teachers and the buildings and the kids. The only person I wasn't sick of was Drew. He and I had our eyes fixed on spring football since the day Middleton had clued us in about Trahan. I thought about spring football all the time, and I'd bet anything Drew did too. But through those months, we never talked about it. May seemed a long way off, and neither of us wanted to jinx anything. When April came, though, spring football was all we talked about. I was sure Drew would be invited, and I told him so. He had size and strength, and he was a natural leader. Even in the flag football games, playing with older kids, Drew took command of the huddle. Once I'd gone through all the reasons that he was a lock to get invited, he'd do the same for me. "You've got speed and power, Mick, and you know the game so much, better than anyone. You see things other people don't. I wish my dad had taught me half of what you've learned from yours. You've got the football IQ of Einstein." When I was with him, when we were talking, I'd feel good about my chances. But when I was alone, all I could remember were the plays I'd screwed up. It was the last Monday in April. I was just about to head off to Crown Hill Park when the phone rang. I picked it up, pencil in hand, ready to take a message for my mom or my dad. "This is Mr. Downs, head football coach at Shoshone High." The voice said, "Is Mick Johnson at home?" My heart was thumping. "This is Mick Johnson." "Mick, Mr. Trahan watched your Pop Warner football team off and on in the fall. Maybe you were aware of that." "Yeah," I said. "I mean, sort of." I stopped, confused. "Well, Mr. Trahan tells me that you are a promising player. Mr. Rooney says your attitude and practice habits are good. We start spring football here at Shoshone High School next week. I'd like you to participate. I want to be clear, though. This invitation doesn't mean you are on the varsity. It just means you are working with the varsity. How's that sound?" "That sounds great," I said, my stomach so dry I could hardly talk. "That sounds tremendous." He laughed. "All right, then. You know where the school is?" "Sure, I know. What time?" 3:15. "See you there." "Coach Downs," I said before he could hang up, "did Mr. Trahan tell you about Drew Carney? He was our quarterback and—" "Yes, I know all about Drew. I'll be calling him today, too." I hung up the phone and sat, staring straight ahead. I was going to get my chance.